Hello and welcome back to the Edit Undo podcast. We are at day 3 now of the UX South Africa event, and we have got a wonderful guest, one of our workshop hosts, Inez. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell me first of all, we only had 2 workshops this year, which you were one of. How did firstly, what were you engaging the audience with, and how did that go?
Okay, so we wanted to really teach people about designing for people with disabilities. And our focus was on designing for people who are completely blind, which is very different for designers because everything is supposed to be visual. And so it's quite, it's different from your usual day-to-day design work. And what we wanted to achieve was really just to show people that there's more that we still need to learn about, like designing the audio experience and understanding how that works. And also just to create the empathy. And so we brought, people from Blind SA in to come and participate in the workshop and test the work that the workshop attendees were designing. And it shocked people, which was great. I think it really...
Myself included.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was the reaction that I really wanted. It's just like, oh, wow, this is hard, first of all. And it takes a lot more thought than you'd think of just like putting on a color blindness filter to see what that would look like. So it's...
I mean, I remember in the workshop, I sort of, it kind of feels like, up until this point, you've been drawing in black and white, and then someone suddenly like, there's all of these colors that you haven't been considering.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was definitely an eye-opening experience. And I think, with workshops, it's easy to just, in a way, distract people with activities and so on without necessarily achieving anything. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me about your workshop was actually getting the blind people to be there next to you, using this thing that you've made in those slightly cringy moments as you realize that it's just not working.
Yes.
It was amazing. It was an amazing experience. And so tell me, like, how did you guys come upon this topic? Like, I mean, it's not something that you would pretty much stumble onto.
Well, I guess over time, I have been lucky enough to meet designers who are accessibility enthusiasts, or rather, they really that's like their speciality. So it's been really interesting just to start seeing what they are working on. And most recently, because now I work at ABSA, I look after the banking app. Nice. We've recently just started doing some investigation into like how the app is performing for people who can't see. And we started doing like internal testing, which was really interesting to see how people use our actual banking app and how they make payments and how they do the day-to-day things that you never think about catering for certain people for. So the work at ABSA, I think, really sparked the passion again, especially if you think about like financial inclusion, making sure that you really allow people to make a payment safely or go to the ATM without having to ask someone to enter their PIN for them. So I think that there's a big responsibility that we play by working in a bank and ensuring financial inclusion.
No, I think that is true. And I mean, I think his name, was it Charles? No, can't remember. Christo, that's right. Yes, when you're speaking about his experience sort of trying to use one of the other banks who we will not name, and just struggling. I mean, like, it's easy to think as accessibility as a second thought, but then when you actually watch somebody trying to use your app and actually trying to access money which belongs to them, and they are unable to do so, it sort of shifts your lens and your understanding a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
And you have to see it. Like, you have to be there and see how they interact, and that's the thing that shocks you. Like, I've never seen anyone interacting with technology this way. That's the first thing that's like shocking for most people. And then it's like, okay, I've never seen this experience before. How do I actually design for it in the first place? So it's there's a whole world to it. Yeah.
And I think, just casting our minds into the future a little bit with the advent of the Alexas, the Google Homes, and all of that. The future is going in one direction.
Yes.
And audio is a part of it.
Exactly.
So I think it is high time that we start to take that a little bit more seriously. And not necessarily just, blindness as a disability, because there are a whole bunch of others that we need to take into account.
Way more. Yeah.
And so tell me, stepping a little bit away from the conference, you told me a little bit about the fact that you're looking after the banking app. Can you tell us a little more about how you actually ended up where you are today? Like, how did you get into design? How did you step into this space?
Sure. So how I got into design, I've always been a designer. So since I left university, I studied media. So it wasn't UX design, but it was similar fields, and we practiced graphic design and coding and things. And then my first internship I got was in the UX department because, I applied for the internship and they asked me where I would want, like which department. I said I could do design, I could go into development. But then I told them about the thesis that I was writing, which was redesigning the website for an author for his books. And initially I had started just sort of visually redesigning it. And then I was like, but why is someone going to go to an author's website? What do they want to see? What does the author need from his website? So I started thinking about things like that, and I started doing research into the experience of like books or stories and going online to do more. And I was like, what do people... I read, but I've never gone
on their website.
to the website of the books that I've read. So that was super interesting. And when I told this company about the thesis I was writing, they were like, oh, join our UX department.
Nice.
I had no idea what UX was, but I needed a job. I was like, yes, please.
Okay.
And that's how I started. I had a really great mentor. As you mentioned in your talk, like, mentors can make a big difference. So I worked with someone who, he gave me books, he was patient, he taught me like everything, and he was very smart. And so
amazing.
Yeah, it got me on the right path.
And then tell me maybe how have you found the conference so far? I mean, we've been in lockdown for almost 2 years, or I don't know if it's more than that or a little bit less. But it's been a while since we've been out and about as the design community. So, now that you're back in the mix, how have you found it?
No, I mean, that's the best part. It's like seeing all of your friends again and ex-colleagues or people that used to go to meetups and things, like just all these familiar faces, and everyone's a designer, so you get each other. Like you just, you know each other kind of, and so it's really like a safe space, feels safe. And it's vibey, and I kind of wish they gave us longer breaks so we could
talk and chat more. I actually, you're super right about that. I've been like rationing my social interactions to make sure that I can at least reach everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess it is good. Like, I mean, my extroverted self obviously is super happy about this.
My introverted self is happy, but that's because they're the designers and the people I know. Yeah,
we're a different breed.
We are.
But I think maybe before we wrap things up, one last question that I would ask is like, if you were to, it's 2 questions almost, but maybe one thing that specifically stuck out for you at the conference over the past 3 days. And the second one, maybe so that you can also just think about it, is if there was one thing that you would change apart from the one you've already mentioned, what would it be?
Okay, the one thing that has stuck out for me, I don't know if it's the first time attending a conference where the company I work for is one of the big sponsors. And we had, like Alex doing a talk, and it's the first time I've like felt really proud of the place that I work at.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
So watching my boss, listening to the things he talked about, but then also hearing the impact it's had on other people at the conference and what they now think about the work environment at ABSA and the designers and how we are so supportive and it's true.
Yeah.
So that's, it's nice that it's true.
Exactly, because I think too often we say all of these things, but it's just lip service.
Exactly. and because I'm there, so I know that it's true. And I just felt really proud of where I worked. And I've never really worked somewhere permanently. So that's also new for me.
Yeah.
To actually care properly about the place.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And I think it's good to notice that, because when it doesn't exist, when you're not proud of the place that you work, that sours your experience very quickly.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
And then
things I would change. One thing I would change. That's difficult.
I actually thought of one, but it's so silly.
What is it?
Just food that's easier to eat.
Food that's easier to eat. No, that is true. Like sitting there with a knife and fork trying to cut like...
I wasn't having it.
And then you're trying to chat, but...
It's so silly, but it makes such a big difference. I was just like, imagine if it was like a burger or a hot dog or like something just low maintenance.
Yeah, it's like some chips, sandwich, like... That would be better, I agree.
But the food was nice.
It was nice, at least. Conference food, but no, I thought generally the talks were pretty good. I actually would prefer, like, I know a lot of the talks brought in people from the sponsors themselves. I guess that's how it works, though. But sometimes I wonder, like, what else is out there except for the people who sponsored an event. But as a person who works in the community industry, I know that your sponsors are important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I mean, they actually make it happen in some ways. But I think you are right. There is, because there also is the temptation when you are a sponsor to become very sponsory and talk about all the things that our company is doing this and our company is doing that. And I think it might not even be that the company forces the person to do that, but they almost feel like they have a responsibility to make it up for the company. So I think that's a very good point. But thank you very much for your time, Inez.
Thanks, Alfie.
And it was good to have you at UX South Africa and also on the podcast.
Great
to be here. To everybody listening, peace.